On this edition of the Table of Content, Michael and I review a short story called The Shadow by Laura E. Richards. We'll look at the turning from darkness to light and how that impacts one young boy. Stay tuned, that's coming up next, right here on the Table of Content. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Table of Content. I am Albert Saenz, joined by my faithful companion, Michael Steele. Michael, how are you?
I'm getting better every minute, Albert. It's 43 degrees here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and that's warm for us at this point.
74 for us. That's that's a cool point for us this winter.
Oh my goodness.
I'm glad that we are both enduring our own winter crises, as it were.
Yes.
But let's move into the story. So, as I said in the intro, we've got this short story by Laura E. Richards called "The Shadow," and the brief synopsis is that we have a young boy who's upset because all he sees is the darkness. He says in the story, he says, "The world is so dark. See, it is all dusky gray, and there is no beauty in it. Why must I stay in this sad gray world?" And an angel comes because an angel heard that he was distressed, he was sad, he was crying. So the angel says, "Hey, what's going on?" So then the angel basically proceeds to show the boy the light, for a lack of, for keeping it short. And the boy
Right.
sees the light. He sees children playing. He sees the sun. He sees dew on the grass, and then he proceeds basically to go out and to enjoy the world. So
Right.
that's the short version, and this is actually a really short story. So I gave you a short version, but the story itself is pretty short. So if you're not familiar with the story, look it up on our YouTube channel for We Are One Body Audio Theater, or go to our website, waobtheatertheater.org, and be under the door-to-door storytellers and look up The Shadow. It's a great little story, and we're going to try and open that up a bit more. But I'll toss it over first to you, Michael. General opinions or thoughts on the story?
Yes. A couple of things that came to mind when I was reading it. And the first is, well, it's well written. And the idea with a short story, it has to be well written because you have a short amount of time or space or words to get across a point or an experience or a lesson to be learned. And I was trying to articulate and ask myself, what is the point in this story? What is the author trying to get across? And two things came to mind. I think one, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's a story about conversion. But in what aspect is that? And I think it's one, perspective, and then also how our thoughts actually kind of determine our outlook. And so I made this correlation. There's a book out there, another book called Christian Self Mastery. There's a whole chapter dedicated to controlling one's thoughts. And the idea is our thoughts are kind of like our friends, and they influence us for good or bad, and they shape our view of the world, right? And so some of our thoughts call for our attention because we've given them attention in the past. And so we can focus on negative thoughts and go down that road, or we can focus on positive thoughts and go down that road. And that will shape our eventual moral becoming. But I thought it was really beautiful the way that one line is. You would think you're looking at a shadow, a little kid looking at a shadow is usually a cause for wonder, but there's a real depth to this little one. The angel asks the child, "What ails you, little one?" It says, "The world is so dark." He's going not just from seeing his own shadow, but he's like the story's springboarding you into shadow as allegorical for evil, darkness, fear, depression, etc., etc. The world is so dark. See, it's all dusky gray and there's no beauty in it. Why must I stay in this sad gray world? So that was a couple of initial thoughts that came to mind.
So what do we kind of classically say darkness, right? Darkness is the absence of light.
Right.
And whether whether we're, you know, sometimes we say, "Oh, that person, they're so dark and they're so moody," or whatever they say. They're emo, or I don't know what it is.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Debbie Downer.
right, Debbie Downer, right? I think though that it is sort of a way that God sort of built us, that even if we are dark spirited, we all are drawn to the light.
Mm,
We're drawn to the light. And yeah, without the light, you know, regardless of how we live our life, right? So if we live our life in a way that is contrary to the light, well, yeah, it's kind of a dark lifestyle. But
mm,
it, when we don't have it, right, we're sort of confronted with the light, or we're looking for it, we're searching for the light, we're desiring to see that light. And in our Christian belief, right, we're looking for the light of Christ. And it makes me
yes.
think about on the big Easter Vigil Mass, right? You come in to darkness, and it would be very valid. I mean, especially for a kid, I think, that doesn't fully understand it, let alone an adult. But you're like, why am I in this church that's so dark? It's
Yes.
it's kind of creepy. It's spooky. Like I don't know what's going on. Then
Yes.
they come in and they process with the Easter candle, and then slowly that light of Christ, right, spreads throughout, and what was once
Mm,
dark is then light. So I think that focusing on darkness versus, because they could have just said, hey, the boy could have said in the story, oh, the world's a bad place. It's
mhm.
it's gray. I don't like it. I can't see anything. But it was, the world is so dark. So there's a contrast that needs to be pointed out, and it comes in the story, but it that darkness is something that most people, they really don't relish in. That they don't want to be in the
Right.
dark. They want to be where there is light.
Right. 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 A couple of characters come to mind as well that are portrayed in literature. I was thinking Eeyore, Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore is kind of like one of those people who kind of like are kind of naturally bent towards a pessimistic view of reality. And then another thought came to mind was Puddleglum, the character Puddleglum in the Chronicles of Narnia, the Silver Chair. He's kind of a always looking like at the world like the glass is half empty, you know. Um, but yeah, it's true. Like I like how you said that darkness is an absence of light. Like it kind of presupposes something else there. And if you think about shadows, they're only cast by light. And so the shadow presupposes that there's something better out there. And that's why I said at the beginning, I feel like it's a story of perspective. The child, whether the child was aware of it or not, was focusing on the shadow and not on the light causing the shadow, you know. Um, and isn't that in the spiritual life, like you were saying, the light of Christ? Isn't that like the dynamic of our Christian life? Is like we are meant and we're called to be children of light. So part of the struggle, the dramatic struggle of our lives, is turning away from the darkness and turning towards the light. And yeah,
I'm so glad that you made the point about how shadows are created by the light. Like, shadows just don't exist on their own. There could be darkness, but again, what is darkness? Right? Darkness is the absence of light. In the shadow, there's an absence of light, so
right.
it creates that shadow. And there's some wonderful quotes about this, right? So, like John the 23rd, Saint John the 23rd said,
Mm,
"If God created shadows, it was to better emphasize the light." you
mm,
know and then another one, right, another one I like is Saint Catherine of Siena said, "It is only through shadows that one comes to know the light." So
mm,
her point, right, her point is that we will get to know the light with the shadow, almost like it's sort of an inescapable part of the life that we lead.
mm,
And in seeing the shadow and having to deal with the shadow and having to deal with the darkness, we will come to know the light that much better.
Right. Yes. And the light is associated with good, with fullness of being, with ultimately speaking, God Himself. You can make that comparison. You know, yeah, Christ even called Himself, "I am the light of the world." Right, and yeah, even another literary device, Plato, the ancient pagan philosopher, came up with his famous allegory of the cave.
Right,
And the
right,
whole allegory of the cave is like leaving the darkness and coming into the light, into the reality that is. And that's a spiritual process. So it's amazing how short this story and how powerful it is, and yet it conveys that dramatic um, dynamic of, okay, there is evil, there is darkness, but that's not a positive reality. It's a privation or an absence of something that should be there. Fallen angels were, before they fell, actually splendid, glorious angels,
right.
and it was their turning away from the light that made them dark. So,
I want to move on to the next section because it sort of helps continue our conversation here. So the angel asks, "Do you not hear the birds singing and the other children calling at their play?" And the child said, "Yes, I hear them, but I do not know where they are. I cannot see them. I see only the shadow. Moreover, if they saw it, they would not sing and call, but would weep as I do." Right. So this child is like, I know there's something good there, but I can't see it. I don't know where it is. And it really feels like us a lot of the times on our journey. It's like, look, fine, I'll give in. There's something good out there, but I just don't know where it is. I just can't see it. I don't feel it. I can't experience it. I'm
yeah.
in this sort of dark place. But then what happens next, right? The angel lifted the child and set it on its feet with its face to the early sun. "Look," said the angel. And I think that is such a great sort of example and, point for our Christian faith, that Christ sort of lifts us up, when we're in the darkness
Mm,
and says, "Look at all of the beauty, look at all of the goodness."
mm, beautiful. Yeah. It's interesting how, as well, the angel's next move here is to appeal to another sense of the child. The child's using his sense of sight to fixate on the shadow, on darkness, and but then the angel counters with, "Well, use another sense. Don't you hear birds singing and the other children calling at their play?" So the angel's like not trying to exacerbate the child's problem by focusing it right away on sight, but is trying to broaden the child's perspective or experience of reality by appealing to another sense. I thought that was kind of interesting as well. And I don't know if there's any deep spiritual relation to be made there, but I wonder if there's that idea of, like you were saying, like when we suffer, when we see the darkness in the world, we have this kind of intuition that things aren't as they should be. This is not how things are meant to be. There has to be something better. Um, but then the child acknowledges that, yeah, there's happiness, there's more of a positive reality beyond myself, but I'm incapable of turning myself towards that. I'm helpless. I'm just kind of like, whatever, trapped by the shadow. And like you were saying, that's so powerful, where the angel actually just kind of helps, supernatural help, set the child on its feet with its face to the early sun and commands him, "Look."
I was thinking about what you said. If, where's the sort of spiritual connection to the other senses? And I think there is something to see sort of in the beauty of the world that God has created. But
Mm,
I think that when we do have the opportunity to sort of close our eyes, we sort of stop looking and listen, we find a lot of ways to sort of draw ourselves into the light, like beautiful music,
yeah.
just it could be classical music, it could be Christian music, it could be
Right.
Gregorian chant, it could be choral music, it could be a lot of different things. But someone, can find a path to the light through something beautiful like music, or you know, s- sitting outside in a forest, or the river running, right? You hear birds, you hear the water running. Like there's peace,
Right.
right? That can come just from sort of letting those senses sort of be engaged in their own way, and not just
Right.
the eyes. So, but obviously in the story, the boy's saying, "Yeah, yeah, I can hear it, but I just can't see it." So we have to sort of make that connection between the senses, so that because we really are a visual people, right? We really are a
Mm,
visual people. So we want to be able to see it,
mm,
and it sort of reminds me.
mhm.
It reminds me a little bit about Thomas, the doubting Thomas and Jesus, right? So Jesus appears to the other disciples in the upper room, and then they say, "Hey, Thomas, guess what?" And he's like, "No,
Mm,
sorry.
mm.
I'll,
Right.
I'll I'll believe it when I can see him, put my own finger in his side." So Jesus comes back and says, "Hey, Thomas, come here. Let's take care of this." And and what does Jesus say? Right? Blessed are those who believe and have not seen. Right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm not coming down on the boy in the story, but there is a part of this which is, and it goes back to what you said about the angel trying to appeal to the other senses. Like, and we have to be able to do that at some point. We have to be able to believe in the light without seeing it. I mean,
Yes.
what do you tell a person who's blind? Well, you're kind of out of
Right.
luck because you can't see the light.
Right.
It's not going to work. So there has
Right.
to be a part of faith which is sort of beyond seeing the light. Now, faith is the light, right? It is the way, and but there is more to it than just seeing it all the time, right?
Mm,
Because
mhm.
the sun goes down at night,
Right.
we still have a Christian faith even when the sun goes down, right? So,
Right.
we just have to be able to understand that, you know, the angel was on a good track there to say, what, can you hear it? Much like Thomas was like, I'm going to need to see it, you know,
Right.
and they were like, well, just believe us. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to do it till I get to touch it. Okay. All right. That is a way to go about it. But
Right.
Jesus himself says it, right? Blessed are those who believe and have not seen.
Right. It's interesting that you said that that faith in the sun. Someone told me that when we first moved to this corner of the world, we're in Pittsburgh area, and so there's a lot of gloomy weather. I think someone told me once that we compete with Seattle, Washington, and Belgium for the amount of gloomy days. And someone told me this as well. It's like, just think, the sun is still shining above the clouds. And I
Right,
thought,
right,
that's,
right.
it's true. It's still there. The sun is still there. And but another thing that helped me when we moved here to as an adjustment, moving from sunny Southern California to Pittsburgh was especially during winter. Someone said, again, find something every day. Find something beautiful in winter, and just enjoy that beautiful moment or that beautiful thing in winter. And maybe that's going a little bit outside of the realm of like shadow and light, but the idea is as a way of turning away from sort of pessimism or focusing on the negative. Again, turn towards the light. Find the beauty in things. Let that enlighten you. Let that soothe your soul. And help you, grow in your spirit. So
I keep thinking about how light sort of overcomes darkness, and I had this thought in my head,
mm,
and please forgive it. I'm a Lord of the Rings sort of nut, and I keep thinking about in the scene from the two towers, and it's the very end of the battle at Helm's Deep, and Gandalf said, look to the east on the fifth day, I think it is, or the third day, and,
yeah,
and
right, right.
and
Third day or fifth day. Yeah,
right.
right.
So what happens? So they charge out from Helm's Deep, and then the sun is about to come up, and all of the, Urukai and all the orcs, they're all there. And then up at the very top of the mountain edge, they see Gandalf the White, and then
Mm,
there's the rest of the Rohinian. They've
mm.
returned, and they charge down, and then all of the orcs are gonna fight them, but then the sun comes out from behind them and
Yes.
blinds them, right? And between the return of good men to fight the fight and the shining of the sunlight, they overcome such darkness, right? So
Yes.
it's just this power of the light cannot sort of be. I mean, I can't express it fully. I use a movie reference to try to give people an idea
Right.
of it. But when we head back to the story, after the angel picked up the boy, it said, "Look," and then the child brushed away his tears. And what does he
Mm,
see? He sees green fields, gold, shining with dewdrops, other children running, laughing, shouting, crowning one another with blossoms. And the boy says, "Why? They're the children." You know.
mm,
So when we allow ourselves to see that light, it just
mm.
crushes the darkness.
Yes. It dispels it, like it flees. And if you think about that, like if you light a candle or you turn on a flashlight or turn on, it's like you can't even see the darkness going away. It's so like instantaneous. Like you were saying, they're poor comparisons that we try to relate with our experience of reality, but that's like how powerful the light of Christ is. When we turn towards it, I mean, he dispels it. It's gone. And I think that's really like the trick of the Christian life is to continue allowing the light of Christ to get into those dark closets that we have, you know, locked and boarded up and everything, and to open those doors and let the light of Christ shine in there as well. And I like how you brought out the encounter of Thomas, doubting Thomas with our Lord, in that sense.
So we're getting close here to the end, and I'm gonna finish a little before the end of the story because I think it's the best way maybe to close up this discussion, and it references back what you were talking about, the clouds and gloomy days, and the boy is sort of right in awe now that he's seen everything, and
Mm,
he says, "And the sun is shining," cried the child.
mm.
"Yes," said the angel, "it was shining all the time." And just like, someone told you, "Hey, the sun is still shining behind the clouds."
Yes.
Like the light is always there
Yeah.
somewhere. That
Yeah.
light is always shining and nothing is going to put it out. Not
Yeah.
not not clouds, not any other form of darkness. That light is always shining somewhere.
Right.
Um, so I really liked that point, and it was shining all the time.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. God continues to be God, right? In spite of everything. And I think maybe that's the dynamic of the dark night of the soul, but that's probably beyond the scope of our brief conversation here. But the sun is always shining. And um, yeah, it's beautiful.
I
Don't don't look at it though. I'm not advocating like staring at the sun for any length of time.
right, right. I mean, I think they make special glasses for that, like when there's a solar eclipse.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
uh, you know, but I was thinking about children, and just as my closing thoughts here, I was thinking about children, right? And children many times are afraid of the dark. I know that my children are. I don't know. You're a father. I don't know how your
Yep,
children are with the dark.
yep, yeah.
But
We're going through that. Night lights are, yeah,
it, we have this night light that changes colors, and the kids all choose a different color every night. And
oh, nice.
um, but it's this sort of, it's meant to be a night light, so it's not like beaming with power. It's soft.
Mm,
Depending on which color you can choose. It'll be a little bit brighter, a little bit darker, but it's this sort of safety. It's this sort of soft safety, and it helps the children feel comfortable. And you said, you know, don't stare at the sun directly for too long because you'll end up kind of hurting your eyes.
yeah,
And I think the beauty of Christ is that we can always look at Him as long as we choose to, because he's sort of a softer light. I mean, he's an intensely bright, world-saving, humanity-saving light,
Yeah.
but he won't hurt our eyes, you know.
Right.
And much like my children's nightlight, it doesn't hurt their eyes, but it helps them feel safe. And just to know that we can always look to that light, and that it will never be than more than we can handle. It'll be the exact amount of light that we need to expel the darkness.
Mm, beautiful. And I was just thinking, maybe this is my closing thought as well, but like what you were saying, that dynamic where, you know, my we had this conversation with my kids as well along those lines, being afraid of the dark, but also night light and light. We had this conversation: is why do our eyes have to adjust, and why is it that, when the light comes on in the morning, we have a moment there of squinting and sometimes even pain. And I think there's might be a lesson there as well with the Christian dynamic. Like, Christ will always come into our darkness as the light, but then he'll want us to adjust to greater and greater intensities of light as we grow in our closeness towards him. Like you were saying, he's in and of himself. He's like a burning ball of white hot light, and but he reaches out to us. That's a really yeah. Thanks for sharing that. A thought just came to mind.
Yeah, no, sure. And I like your progression, sort of, as we grow in our faith, the intensity sort of Christ will grow in our own lives. Um,
Mm.
for some people, I do like sort of the intense, on fire, like conversion stories. Those people who are like, yeah, they sort of took it, they sort of took it at
Yeah.
full strength, and it
Yes.
sort of wallops them over the head, and and more power to them. Sort of the way that Saint Paul had his conversion, right? He gets knocked off a horse. There was nothing soft about that,
Yeah.
and Christ is like, hey, we got some work to do, and he's like, okay, fine,
Hmm.
let's
Hmm.
do it,
Yes.
so for some of us, it's a bit more of an intense experience, but still nothing that we can't handle. So no, I appreciate your thought there. Well, Michael Steele, always a pleasure to be able to chat with you. And we were talking about The Shadow by Laura E. Richards. So again, go listen to the story if you haven't heard it. It's a wonderful story, short but really just so meaningful to, I think, everyone. And we hope that you will enjoy that story. And Michael, thanks for joining in the conversation.
Oh, thank you, Albert. And yeah, everyone, let's turn toward the light.
And let's be light. Let's be light for others as well.
Yes, the same. Yeah. Turn toward the light and be light.
Very good. Well, Michael, until the next time, and to you, ladies and gentlemen, until the next time for the next table of content, be good, stay safe, peace.